Today on the channel, it's a return to the Kyle Peterson Top 5, and in today's video, we're going to grab them cakes with the Junkyard Dog.
And the spirit of Ultimate Warrior will run forever!
Kyle here, and welcome back to the channel for another edition of the Kyle Peterson Top 5, a Thursday tradition here on the channel. As every single Thursday, we're counting down my top 5 or occasionally top 10 favorites of something, and today we're counting down my top 5 favorite Junkyard Dog figures of all time. And JYD, one of the biggest superstars of the 80s, and one of those ones where I was of a certain age, and maybe you were if you're my age bracket, I guess. I came into him at the tail end of his WWF run back in the day, where he was, I don't know, dare I say, a little bit of a comedy act in some ways. You know, acting like a dog, barking, doing all that very, I don't know, just comedy style stuff. He was like a young Santino Marella. Well, maybe not that far, but he was a lot more comedic. And then, of course, you know, as I grew a little bit older, I remember him from his time in WCW, part of like the six-man tag champs. Wasn't Paul Orndorff part of that team? Maybe Tommy Rich. So I remember that, obviously, way past his prime. Of course, he was a lot bigger then and all that kind of stuff. So JYD was one as a kid, didn't really capture my heart, like people that maybe just a year or 2 or 3 years older than me maybe, and then especially compared to his time in Mid-South Wrestling. And that was what I always heard. When I did get the internet back in 95 or whatever it was, and I was like, oh, I can see all this wrestling stuff. I can read all this wrestling things. And, you know, you really didn't know that stuff before unless you lived in certain geographies. Well, you would see some stuff in magazines in the time saying back in the day JYD, and you always heard of his Mid-South run. Well, many years later, tape trading was a big thing for me, and I did get some very grainy Mid-South tapes. Thankfully, the WWE Network really helped us out with a lot of Mid-South content, and that truly, everybody always says, oh, but JYD in Mid-South, and you hear, oh, this guy was better back then. Well, I honestly do believe, after watching a lot of that Mid-South stuff, JYD was on another planet compared to where he was in the WCW and WWF. Man, that was JYD, and I know if I would have been watching during that time frame, whew, if I would have been watching during that time frame, there's no doubt JYD would have been one of my absolute favorites. Just a bad dude, and big, muscular JYD, whereas, like I said, later on in his career, he packed on some pounds, kind of went through the motions, but man, that early JYD, and of course the stuff against the Freebirds, things like that, man, oh man, JYD an all-timer, and obviously a Hall of Famer, as we do know, in the WWE, and one of the most fondly remembered superstars. And I always kind of go back to, like, my aunt, and my aunt is obviously a lot older than me, but when she thinks of wrestling, she thinks of Jimmy Snuka, she thinks of Junkyard Dog, of course Hulk Hogan, a lot of the rock and wrestling stuff. But JYD is one of those tippy-top guys for a generation. When they think of wrestlers, they think of a guy like JYD. So definitely an all-timer, and definitely an all-timer in the action figure game. You could definitely make the argument that there hasn't been enough JYD figures based on how long he's been around and the popularity. We've had a lot from Mattel, of course. We had his classic LJN, his retro-style figure, classic superstars, thumb wrestlers, bendy wrestlers, things like that. There's a lot of rumors right now as I'm filming this that Series 2 of Power Town is going to have JYD, so we'll see what happens with that one in the future. Might have to redo this list. Who knows? Maybe make it into a top 10 in the future. We can very easily do that. But without further ado, let's get down to it. And always remember, this is my list. Put your list in the comments down below. And without further ado, let's get to it. The JYD Top 5. We kick off the top 5 for a little bit of a controversial one, as this figure was extremely rare at the end of the first run of the Mattel retro toy line, and that's what it is. It's the Mattel Retro JYD figure, and very, very hard to get at the very end, and this one was commanding a very high dollar, and I haven't looked in a long time. It still is probably one of the highest valued retro figures from back in the day, and like 10 years ago, whatever it is. What is time, as we always do say. But this JYD was really, really cool, and the retro line, I was all for it. I have, of course, a kid growing up in the Hasbro era, but we got a lot of current stars. We got a lot of current looks, and it was really not what a lot of people were looking for. I think a lot of people were looking for more classic guys in the retro comeback line, and we got a few of them, but we also got JYD being one of the stars of that. And JYD obviously missed the Hasbro era just by a hair, but it was very cool to get him in the retro line. It felt like he fit, and I felt like this one was better than Elias. Not to pick on Elias, but was anybody clamoring for an Elias retro? I think a lot more people wanted a JYD retro, and that was just kind of the dynamics of that line at the time. Just one that had a lot of stumbles on it, and now I think they've gotten to a pattern. They know what they're doing with it via Mattel Creations. I think that is the way to go. But JYD, one of the stars of that comeback set, I think, and so cool. He had to be a part of this list. He had to be in here at number 5. All right, next up in our JYD countdown, we're at the number 4 spot. Number 4, we head back to Mattel. We head to the Legends line once again for Legends Series 12, Target exclusive, JYD regular edition in the red pants. Of course, there is a blue pants chase version in the Legends Series 12, but red, the one I like better. I don't really remember JYD too much in the blue. I remember him in the white and red, and I think those are predominantly what most people remember and think of when they think of JYD. But the red looks really, really good, and of course, it's kind of the yin and the yang to the white one we got in Elite Series 33. But this JYD is cool. It's one of those ones that we hadn't had a JYD figure from Mattel in quite some time, so it was a welcome addition to the Legends line, Target exclusive line. Of course, the iconic chain is there. You even get a little nod to his WrestleMania match with Harley Race, the great Harley Race, good friend of the channel, maybe, but Harley Race. We get the crown from him as well. Very, very cool. And then the detail here. You get the thump on the back of the tights, JY dog on the sides there, and of course even some on the boots, some action down there. So just an all-around good JYD figure you can set your watch to. And if you missed the prior incarnation, this is a very good, respectable JYD in your Elite collection. And that's why this JYD is coming in at number 4. All right, we've hit the halfway point in our Junkyard Dog countdown. You got your list together. Make sure you put it in the comments down below. But our number 3 selection, once again, we're seeing a pattern here. We're going to Mattel. We're going to Mattel Elite 33. We're going to the old Junkyard Dog in his white and stars outfit. Got the thump. Got the dog on the side there. Of course, you got the collar and chain. This is JYD, where a lot of people, if you close your eyes and you think of the Junkyard Dog, this is exactly what you're thinking of. And I have fond memories of actually buying this figure at Walgreens. Oh, shout out to Walgreens on clearances. I wasn't a completionist. I don't even remember what line I officially became a completionist. I was buying Ultimate Warriors, then face painted guys, then Legends, and it just kind of snowballs into a completionist mindset. But I remember getting, I think, Legends at this time. I was only buying guys I really liked in Legends, and obviously JYD a part of that. And for whatever reason, I found him at Walgreens for the first time, or at least the first time I wanted to pick him up. And I still remember that Walgreens where it is. I remember walking in. It's so weird how you remember. And I bought a lot of figures in my day, and a lot of those figures, you remember the time and place and where you were when you bought them. Just very strange. But I remember clear as day picking up this old JYD figure way back in the day at Walgreens. Like I said about the last one, very good JYD. This one's even better. That's why it's a spot ahead here in my countdown. But it is the iconic JYD I think for most people think of, for the most part, from his WWE, WWF run back in the 80s. So JYD Elite 33 coming in at number 3. Down to the final 2 in our JYD countdown, and the number 2 Junkyard Dog figure comes to one of my favorite lines of all time. It comes from Jakks Classic Superstars, and we go all the way back to Jakks Classic Superstars Series 4. And this is, of course, Junkyard Dog. Very similar to the Mattel one we just looked at, but it is the Classic Superstars one. Now, I know I love my Jakks figures. I know a lot of people say, oh, they're out of proportion. We've been through that whole rigmarole numerous times here on the channel. But of course, you look at this in the eyes of when this came out. Elites weren't a thing. Deluxe aggressions weren't a thing. Ruthless aggression style was the tippy-top style of action figures, and you could just imagine how cool it was to get classic wrestlers at that time, where Nobody gave us classic wrestlers at that time. So the Classic Superstars line was such a cool thing for longtime wrestling fans. And this was the primo style of action figure at the time. So you can just imagine how cool it was to get a JYD figure, being his last figure, being his LJN way back in the day. Just a very, very cool thing. And of course, that series is a very popular series in the annuals of Jakks Classic Superstars history. So this one, a lot of coolness around it. And like I said, a long time between a JYD figure. So this is even cooler and even a little bit more special. So that's why for me, this is at number 2. One left. Who's it going to be? I think longtime wrestling fans probably know where this one is going. But let's take a look at it. The number 1 JYD figure of all time. We've arrived at the number 1 spot. Do you got your list together? Put it in the comments down below. And of course, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on this very video, as we got countdown video every single Thursday. And every once in a while, we get a top 10 mixed in with these top 5s as well. So make sure you do subscribe to this very YouTube channel. All right, we're at the number 1 spot, and I think you guys know probably what the number 1 is. What is it? Obviously, I come from a generation of LJNs, and that's exactly what is here at number 1. But that being said, guess what? I did not own the Junkyard Dog LJN as a kid, but man, oh man, is this iconic, and man, oh man, did a lot of people own this one. There's probably no doubt about it. This is probably the best-selling, I almost said LJN, but the best-selling Junkyard Dog figure of all time. A lot of kids had this one, whether they're a fan of JYD or not. This was very, very plentiful in the 80s. Somehow I didn't come up with it. Some of those first sets of LJN were a little bit before my time, and it was later on that I got some of those ones. Maybe at a garage sale or a toy store that has old stock sitting around. But JYD is one I just never did own, and I don't even know if I remember my friends owning this JYD, so I really didn't have it until I was an adult. So it's a very interesting one going that way. But when you think of the core LJN figures, I mean, I guess it comes down to where you're at, but if you think of LJN, a lot of people think that, of course, original Hulk Hogan, Hillbilly Jim, the Iron Sheik, possibly Nikolai Volkov, and JYD. I think those 5 are some of the most iconic LJNs of all time. Obviously, I could say the Ultimate Warrior for me because I was a little bit older or a little bit younger, whatever you want to say, whatever you want to say it. For the Ultimate Warrior, I did get that one. That was my favorite in my LJN playing days. But for a whole generation, those 5 I did rattle off are probably at the tippy top there. But of course, JYD got his gray chain going on. Very cool accessory with this one. Obviously one that's missing from a lot of JYD figures if you're finding this one used. But this does have the gray chain. I also own the red chain in my collection as well. Now there is a black chain. And man, the chain's all day long on old JYD. I do not own the black chain. I guess a little bit of that long game. Hopefully eventually I'll come across it at a good price. Swoop in, pick that one up in the future. In the future, we'll try to do that one here. But no doubt about it, an iconic LJN. One everybody's seen at one time of their life. Be it if you're an action figure fan, you're going to toy stores, things like that. There's no way you haven't come across one of these sometime in your travels. Just iconic and iconic to this very day. So no doubt in my mind, this is the number 1 JYD figure of all time. At least is voted by me. Remember, put your list in the comments down below. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Turn on the old notification bell as we got videos every single day and then some. We got even more content for you over on the Patreon channel, including early access to videos like this, bonus content, exclusive content, giveaways, Q&As, you name it. It's all going on down over there at the old Patreon channel. And you can also support the channel at ProWrestlingTees.com. Search Kyle Peterson. Don't forget social media. SirPaul64 on Twitter, Instagram, _Kyle_Peterson. So for the Junkyard Dog, I'm Kyle. See you guys all real soon.